You know that feeling when everything on the surface looks, well, fine. You're going through the motions. Life isn't exactly terrible, but there's this quiet uh, whisper,
Hmm.
a sense that something deeper, maybe something more vibrant, is missing.
Yeah, definitely.
Our source for this deep dive starts right there. The author of Slow Sex, The Art and Craft of the Female Orgasm, Nicole Daedone.
Hmm.
She talks about being in her 20s, living in San Francisco, seemingly on a good path, master's work, relationship.
But still feeling that void.
Exactly, that persistent feeling of something absent.
It's surprisingly common, isn't it? That gap between how things look and how they actually feel inside. Richness isn't just about the external stuff.
Right.
And that's really where we're kicking off today, diving into the core ideas of this book, Slow Sex, and, well, the practices it suggests might help bridge that gap.
And to really hammer this home, the book uses this brilliant analogy.
Mhm.
It's about really tasting a tomato for the first time.
Ah, the tomato.
Not, one of those pale, watery supermarket things that barely taste of anything.
Right, the cardboard kind.
Yeah. But a real tomato, like maybe one grown in a garden, actually, the author mentions her Uncle Bob. He grew these amazing sun-ripened tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And she describes biting into one. And it was like, whoa, a revelation, bursting with flavor, earthy, dense, tasting the earth, basically.
And compared to the usual blandness,
It was a whole different dimension, completely different.
and that simple sensory thing, it really shines a light on how we might think about sex, doesn't it?
Totally.
Like those bland tomatoes, maybe many of us are having a kind of diluted experience of sex, perhaps without even realizing there's potential for something, well, much more intense, much more fulfilling.
It's like we've gotten used to the blandness.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know. There's this whole other spectrum of flavor available.
But you listening to this, you're probably someone who looks for more than just the surface, right? You want those aha moments, that deeper understanding.
Seeking richness.
And that's what the philosophy in Slow Sex seems to offer, a path to a richer experience. Not just, in bed, but in how we connect with our bodies, our desires.
Precisely. So our mission for this deep dive, really, is to pull out the key nuggets from Slow Sex, give you a solid foundation, a sense of its principles, and the potential impact it might have.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Slow Sex. The book links it to the slow food movement, which makes sense.
Yeah, that's a deliberate parallel. Slow food was a reaction against, fast industrialized food. It emphasized quality, sustainability, connection.
Savoring things.
Right. And slow sex takes a similar approach to intimacy, shifting away from rushed, maybe goal-oriented encounters.
Towards experiences that feel more sustainable, like fulfilling long-term.
Exactly. And rooted in connection with ourselves, our partners, and really nourishing our sensual selves.
So what's the core principle then, if you had to boil it down?
At its heart, it's about stripping sex back to basics. It's about feeling things deeply in your body, tuning in really closely to physical sensations, and crucially, learning how to communicate what you want. Openly, honestly, feeling it in your bones, you could say.
And a big part of this, a central practice they talk about a lot, is orgasmic meditation. OM.
Right, OM.
Now, the name might sound a bit grand, or maybe intense.
It can sound that way, yeah. But the author is quick to point out it's actually a very simple, structured practice, meditative.
So what does it involve, practically?
Basically, it involves a partner, usually a man in the book's examples, gently and consistently stroking the woman's clitoris. For a set time, 15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay.
Being simple.
The mechanics are simple, but the skills you build through doing it, the awareness, the focus, they're described as potentially revolutionary when you bring them back into, say, more conventional sex.
It's like retraining your attention.
Retraining attention, deepening connection, absolutely.
The book also tackles something really important here, how culture views women's sexuality. It's often treated like this. Black box, isn't it?
Totally. Mysterious. Not just by men, sometimes by women themselves, too. And there's this constant unhelpful comparison to the male orgasm, like that's the gold standard.
Yes. Positioning the male experience as the default. And if a woman's experience doesn't fit that neat little box,
then it's seen as lacking somehow. Deficient.
Exactly, which just sets up unrealistic expectations, frustration, misunderstanding.
Yeah, I could see that.
So slow sex argues for shifting focus, moving away from performance, from sex as a task.
Like ticking a box.
Yeah, or a goal to achieve. The author calls this sex as science, linear, rational, almost clinical, just focused on the outcome.
And the alternative?
Is sex as art, much more intuitive, emotional, deeply rooted in the sensations of the moment.
Sex as art. I like that.
There's even an exercise in the book about this, using pillows and journaling, to explore these two different ways of thinking about sex.
Oh, interesting. How does that work?
It gets you to consider your desires through both lenses, the scientific, goal-focused one, and the artistic, sensation-focused one. It really highlights the different approaches we can take.
That sounds quite revealing.
It is, and the book uses another great analogy to clarify this: yoga.
Okay. How does yoga fit in?
Well, think about typical exercise, like running. There's usually a clear goal, right? A time, a distance.
Sure. Quantifiable.
Yoga, though, while it has physical benefits, is much more about the process, the breath, the subtle shifts, letting go of needing the perfect pose.
Right. Falling out is part of it, too.
Exactly. And that's the parallel with OM. It's like yoga in that the emphasis is on the journey, being present, releasing expectations about reaching a specific endpoint, like orgasm.
So valuing the sensations along the way, not just the finish line.
Precisely. Exploring what's happening as it happens.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So from that philosophy, the book then presents, what is it called? The ingredients?
3 simple ingredients, yeah. For experiencing what they call a 4-month orgasm.
A 4-month orgasm. Okay, hang on. That sounds intense and maybe impossible.
Yeah. It's crucial to get that it's not meant literally. It's not like a continuous 4-month climax.
Okay, good. Phew.
It's a metaphor. It represents a fundamental shift towards living in a more consistently orgasmic way, experiencing the world differently.
Got it. A metaphor for a way of being. So what are these 3 ingredients?
The first one is stripping down.
Okay, like physically.
Well, yes, that's part of the context, obviously, but it's more about stripping away the mental layers, the expectations, the judgments we bring to sex.
So less pressure for it to be a certain way, no pressure for climax, no good or bad labels.
Exactly that. Just being open,
Yeah.
curious, accepting whatever comes up.
That sounds freeing, actually.
It can be. The book uses this great analogy of decluttering the retreat center, one taste.
Okay.
Apparently, it had gotten filled with so much stuff, it felt chaotic. But when they intentionally removed the excess, the same furniture in the same space suddenly felt completely different.
Spacious. Intentional.
Right. And it's the same idea with sex. Strip away the mental clutter, the anxieties, the rigid ideas, and you create space for something new, maybe something more profound.
And part of this stripping down, it pushes back against that whole harder and faster idea, doesn't it?
Definitely. That mentality is everywhere. The book suggests that when sensation fades, our instinct might be to ramp things up.
But slow sex says do the opposite.
Kind of. It encourages putting more focused attention on the subtle sensations that are still there, rather than just going faster or harder.
Okay. And what about things like vibrators? How do they fit in?
They touch on that too. Not saying they're bad, necessarily, but maybe relying on them heavily, especially for clitoral stimulation, could potentially desensitize the area over time, because the stimulation is so intense, so general.
Okay. So setting them aside, maybe temporarily, could help recalibrate things, appreciate subtler touch.
That's the idea presented, yeah. Allowing for a return to more nuanced sensitivity.
Interesting. Okay, so ingredient 1, stripping down. What's number 2?
Number 2 is paying attention to sensation.
Seems obvious, but maybe it's not.
Well, it's about cultivating a really deep, focused awareness of the physical sensations in your body as they happen during intimacy. And the book points out this is often way harder than it sounds, especially for beginners.
Why is it hard?
There's a really common tendency, apparently, to mix up sensations with emotions.
How so?
So instead of identifying a specific physical feeling, like I feel pressure building here, someone might just say, I feel happy, or I feel anxious.
Right, labeling it instead of describing the raw feeling.
Exactly. The book has this little flower exercise. You just look intently at a flower for 90 seconds. Simple. But most people find their attention drifts. The flower seems less vivid by the end, just because focus wanders so easily.
Only 90 seconds. Okay.
And the point is learning to tune into those raw physical sensations. Temperature, tingling, texture, pressure is key. Because ultimately, orgasm is experienced through touch and that cascade of bodily sensations.
Right. Makes sense. So stripping down, paying attention. What's the third ingredient?
Third is communicating freely and openly.
Okay. Talking about it?
Yeah, developing the ability to first identify your own desires, especially sexual ones, and then being able to ask for them clearly, honestly.
And this is where cultural conditioning can really get in the way, right? Especially for women.
Hugely. The book talks about how women often get messages, subtle or not so subtle, that discourage voicing sexual needs. Fear of being seen as demanding or unfeminine or just
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah. So they end up prioritizing their partner's pleasure.
Often, yeah, sometimes at the expense of their own. The book uses this really strong metaphor, the good girl drawer.
The good girl drawer.
Yeah, this imaginary place where women tuck away their own desires, their needs to be agreeable, accommodating.
And maybe forget they even put them there after a while.
Exactly. But the encouraging part is the book suggests that those desires are often closer to the surface than we think. Just waiting for permission, waiting for a safe space to come out.
So how do you find them again? How do you give them that permission?
There's an exercise for that too, called taking dictation from your sex.
Okay, intriguing name.
It's a timed writing thing. You just ask yourself, what does my sex want right now? And write whatever comes up. No filter, no judgment.
Just letting it flow.
Yeah. Letting desire have a voice, even if it feels surprising or uncomfortable at first.
That sounds like it could be really powerful, liberating maybe?
Can be, bypassing the inner critic.
But
And the book stresses that learning to ask for what you want in sex can ripple outwards into all parts of life, relationships.
that makes sense. Confidence builds confidence.
Right. And they even offer a specific communication tool for use during OM called Yes And.
Yes, and.
It's a way to gently ask for adjustments. Yes, that feels good. And could you move slightly to the left? While affirming what is working, effective and connecting.
Okay, so those are the three ingredients. Stripping down, paying attention, communicating. Got it.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned OM earlier. Let's get practical. What are the actual steps involved in doing an orgasmic meditation?
Okay, yeah. The book lays out 7 clear steps.
7 steps. Let's hear them.
First is intention. Super simple.
Yeah.
Just consciously deciding to be present and focused for the 15 minutes. Mentally setting the stage.
Okay. Step 1, intention.
Step 2 is grounding. This is about establishing connection and presence before the stroking starts. Maybe holding hands, eye contact, just being physically close and acknowledging each other.
Right, getting centered together. Step 2, grounding.
Step 3, noticing. This one's really key. The stroker takes a moment, looks at the woman's genitals, and describes what they see, objectively, non-judgmentally.
Objectively.
Like what? Things like color, shape, location of different parts. I noticed the skin is pink here, slightly darker there, that kind of thing.
Wow.
Like
Okay,
that.
that sounds intense.
Yeah.
Potentially vulnerable.
Absolutely. But the book emphasizes how profound it can be to be seen that way, without critique or expectation. The author shares her own experience, realizing she'd never really looked at herself with that kind of curiosity before.
And the book actually talks about the word pussy here too, doesn't it?
It does. It addresses the potential discomfort around it, explains the choice to use it as a way of maybe reclaiming it, normalizing it.
Demystifying, if you can say the word comfortably.
Maybe it helps release some shame or negativity attached to the body part itself. That's the idea.
Okay. Step 4.
Step 4 is how to stroke. Very specific guidance here. It's a soft, consistent, gliding stroke on the clitoris for the whole 15 minutes.
Soft and consistent. No fancy techniques needed.
Nope. Emphasis is on consistency, presence. Not trying to make anything happen, just sustained, simple, focused touch.
Got it. Step 5.
Communication.
Mm.
This is the back and forth during the stroke. The woman receiving share sensations, ask for adjustments, pressure, speed, location.
Using that yes and technique maybe.
Exactly. And the book notes how even simple communication here really deepens intimacy, helps both partners tune in.
Okay. Step 6.
Grounding again. But this is at the end of the 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. Why grounding at the end?
It's about consciously reintegrating the sexual energy that's been built up. The book uses an analogy of taming a wild stallion.
Whoa.
Yeah, allowing that powerful energy to settle, integrate, rather than feeling scattered or overwhelmed afterwards.
Right. Bringing it back into yourself. Makes sense. And the last step, number 7.
Number 7 is sharing frames.
Sharing frames.
After the OM, the woman who received the stroke shares a brief verbal snapshot of a moment that was particularly vivid or sensational.
What kind of snapshot?
Focusing on the details. There was a moment where I felt heat spreading and the pressure felt like, that sort of thing. Describing the sensation.
Why is that important?
It helps bridge the physical experience and the thinking mind, solidifies it, and it builds intimacy, giving the partner insight into her inner world.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a structured process. Intention, grounding, noticing, stroking, communication, grounding again, sharing frames.
Yeah, that's the sequence.
Now, I can imagine this brings up questions for people like, The obvious one, do women climax during OM?
Yeah, that's super common. And the book is clear. Orgasm can happen, but it's definitely not the goal.
So it's okay if it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. The focus is on feeling the stroke, the sensations, learning to recognize and cultivate that orgasmic energy. The grounding at the end helps integrate that energy so it feels complete even without a climactic release, less potential frustration.
Okay, what about the noticing step? That sounds like it could make some women uncomfortable, being looked at so closely.
For sure. The book acknowledges that vulnerability. It offers a couple of thoughts. One, kind of practical, is maybe considering a bikini wax, not for external standards, but just to potentially feel more neutral about being seen.
Interesting take.
But more importantly, it stresses open, honest communication. Talking about any anxiety or discomfort, just naming it can often take away some of its power.
Communication again. Seems central.
It really is.
What if someone experiences pain during OM? Does the book address that?
It does, and it's important context. The clitoris is super sensitive, obviously. Pain can happen. Sometimes it might be physiological sensitivity, maybe past injury.
Oh.
Other times it could be more psychological, maybe signaling a need for more safety or self-care.
So what's the advice?
Listen to your body, always. Communicate immediately if there's pain. Adjust or stop if needed. Pain is a signal. Pay attention.
Right. Don't push through pain.
Oh.
Okay, and if someone listening is intrigued, thinking maybe they'd like to try this, who asks? How do you ask?
Again, clear, respectful, honest communication is key. If you want to ask a partner, especially, say, a man asking a woman, the suggestion is to frame it as a meditative practice, focused on her experience, with absolutely no expectation of reciprocation or a specific outcome for the asker.
Like offering a gift of attention.
Exactly, as a gift of focused care.
Yeah.
Presented that way, it's often received really well.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So ultimately, this whole slow sex philosophy, the OM practice,
Yeah,
it's bigger than just sex, isn't it?
much bigger. They're presented as tools. Tools for deeper connection with your own body, your sensations, your desires.
Your capacity for intimacy.
Right. And not just in sex, but as a way of being in the world, in all parts of your life.
Which brings us back to that 4-month orgasm idea, or the lifelong orgasm, as they call it later. What does that really mean?
It's about that shift in relating to yourself, moving beyond orgasm as just an event you have, towards a more continuous state of being guided by your inner compass, your desire.
Living more orgasmically.
In every moment, yeah. That's the idea.
Okay, but using desire as your main guide? That might sound scary to some people. Like, what if I don't have enough desire?
Yeah.
Or what if I follow it and just become a total hedonist?
Valid concerns. The book addresses both. It suggests that practicing OM itself helps gently uncover those hidden desires, makes you more aware of what you actually want.
Okay, so it helps you find the desire.
And as for the hedonism fear, the author shares her own story, initially wanting OM constantly, but eventually reaching a point of feeling full, satiated.
So desire isn't necessarily this bottomless pit if you actually acknowledge it.
That's the perspective. It's about recalibrating your relationship with desire, seeing it not as something dangerous to be controlled, but as your true north, guiding you towards sensation, enjoyment, which leads to feeling happier, more fulfilled.
Your internal true north. I like that.
And this leads to these other ideas in the book, like getting off on any stroke. Meaning finding pleasure even in sensations you might not initially label as good, and the power of saying yes to whatever is happening right now.
So moving beyond just preferences, finding nourishment in unexpected places.
Exactly. Releasing resistance to what is, opening up to a richer spectrum of experience.
So the lifelong orgasm, it's not about chasing peaks. It's about staying connected to that inner desire compass and saying yes to the journey of sensation moment by moment.
That sums it up beautifully. A continuous, vibrant connection to that life force within you.
Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the absolute core message here, the main takeaway from slow sex?
I think ultimately it offers this really compelling path, a way to connect more deeply, more authentically with yourself, with a partner. And the tools are cultivating sensory awareness, communicating courageously, and being willing to embrace and follow your own desires.
And really remembering it's not just about sex. It's presented as a whole new way to operate, right? To be more alive, more engaged with your own experience.
Definitely. Which leads to a really interesting, maybe provocative thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Just take a moment. Consider how consciously tuning into your own desires, even in tiny ways throughout your day, how might that start to shift things, your experience of life? Think about the current flavor of your experiences.
Are they rich, Are they maybe a bit bland?
Exactly. Might you be ready, even just a little, to explore something richer, something more satisfying on a deeper level?
Something to chew on.
Well,
And if people are curious and want to learn more.
they can definitely explore Nicole Daedone's work further, look into Orgasmic Meditation. The main resource mentioned is onetaste.us.
Okay, good to know. onetaste.us.
Yeah. It's really an invitation, isn't it, to think about how you might start to, well, really taste the tomato in your own life.
To savor the fullness that might be waiting just beneath the surface.
Exactly. Waiting to be noticed.